Hi everyone, this is Laura Schaefer. I'm the Director of Product Marketing at StorageCraft, and we're so glad you could be with us today for our broadcast on Windows migration. Windows migration doesn't have to be painful. I just wanted to let you know that we are recording this session, and we will be taking your questions at the end of this broadcast. Just a couple of housekeeping items. If you do have any questions, please include that information and type in your information in the question box, and we will get to it at the end of the broadcast. At this time, I'm going to turn the time over to Ron Gerber, who is the CEO of AngelBeat.
Good afternoon, everyone on the East Coast, and I guess good morning to all the folks on the West Coast. This is Ron Gerber. As many of you know, we run seminars around the country on a variety of IT issues. Just this morning in New York, we were talking to a number of IT executives about their top priorities for 2014. One subject that continually came up was XP end-of-life Windows migration strategies. And those kind of comments were perfect validation as to why the next 58, 59 minutes should be so valuable for you. We've lined up several speakers. First, Kevin Remdy, one of Microsoft's top IT evangelists, who has such a wealth of expertise on helping organizations in the Midwest and throughout the United States deal with XP end of life, deal with issues such as migrating your Windows Server 2003 infrastructure. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. In addition, we have Carl from Enazanti, one of StorageCraft's top partners, as well as Steve Schneider, providing you with insights from a data center storage perspective on how to deal with Windows migration issues. Without any further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Kevin, and thanks again to echo Laura's comment for spending time out of your busy day hearing these three subject matter experts.
Again, thanks everyone for joining us. Yes, our first speaker is Kevin Remdy. He's with Microsoft TechNet. He's also a senior technology evangelist with Microsoft. He has a lot of great information because he's a speaker, a blogger, an IT community organizer for Microsoft. And Kevin will share his thoughts with us right now on Windows XP migration, but you can read more of that on his Full of IT blog. Thanks so much, Kevin.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm gonna hand things over to you right now.
All right. Very good. Hopefully you'll be seeing my screen very soon here. So, Windows migration doesn't have to be painful. Again, my name is Kevin Remdy. I'm a senior IT pro evangelist, technology evangelist with Microsoft, and if you want to follow me at Twitter, there is my handle. But I want to discuss today why you should start moving from Windows XP and how Microsoft and StorageCraft can help you with that. I will talk the Microsoft side, and of course StorageCraft will and partners will talk about that. So over the past 12 years, Microsoft has been making big advancements in operating systems, and really the idea being to increase end-user productivity and enhance security and control, and of course all while reducing the overall IT costs through streamlined PC management. Now to see how far we've come in 12 years, let's take a moment to reflect on some of the changes that we've seen. Now here is a typical work style back in 2001. I think I had this monitor, and I still actually have these speakers. And yes, I probably have Post-it notes, although they're not all over my flat screen. But we've made a lot of innovations in Windows XP. And it was a real game changer back in 2001. But today, you need more than just the desktop of 10 years ago to stay competitive in the 21st century. Now, because of this, the diversity of work styles, that you need to get your job done, you need to also have more technology choices. As this image shows, the days of Post-it reminders sitting on your 15-inch CRT monitor with multiple windows open on one device, your Windows XP machine, this is no longer enough to allow you to get the job done and your businesses to remain competitive in a global competitive economic landscape. So let's talk about some of the key trends here. One of them is that anywhere, anytime is the new normal. People work from multiple locations, from multiple devices. This is all according to Forrester's 2013 Mobile Workforce Adoption Trends document. 29% of global workforce can be contributed as anywhere, anytime information workers. And that's up from 23% in 2011. Nearly 80% of workers spend at least some portion of their time working out of the office. BYOD, bring your own device. This is growing, and it's going mainstream. Mobile devices, smartphones, tablets, these are a category that we're all familiar with now because it's fast growing and really mainstream. According to Forrester, again, we will see 905 million tablets in use for work and home by 2017. In that same study, BYOD today, the scenarios span at least 258 million of the global information workers. And it's just simply unavoidable. Back in February of this year, ZDNet and Tech Republic's BYOD Business Strategy Survey found that 62% of companies either already have a bring your own device allowance in place or they plan to very soon. Now, mobile devices, of course, also require applications and mobile applications. This is a fast-growing category as well. According to some estimates, by 2015, mobile application development projects targeting smartphones and tablets are going to outnumber native PC projects by a ratio of 4 to 1. And according to Building a Mobile Strategy, Corporate Executive Board, March 2012, 66% of organizations invest at that point in mobile app development. And that's, of course, over a year, well over a year ago. Now, this dynamic, connected global environment, this creates new opportunities for everyone, for lots of companies. The idea is we can now drive new business. But it also means a tremendous challenge for your enterprises today. If we're enabling mobile professionals securely and efficiently, that introduces a lot of complexity. For example, how do you convert those line of business applications to be mobile? How do we make them work across multiple devices? How do we manage all the many devices and form factors and platforms in a bring your own device supporting business? How do I provide sufficient data protection across the devices and my clouds? And of course then mobility. Mobile technologies. These have become the top technology priorities for CIOs. Even back in 2012, Gartner did a study amplifying the enterprise, and they found that mobile technologies are number 2 and in many cases number 1 priorities for most CIOs. And of course, again, there's complexity involved with that. There's challenges that companies are facing as they try to tackle this new opportunity and this number 1 priority. Now, so while you're trying to address all of these needs that I just discussed here, here's the painful reality that we've been trying to get you to understand for the past couple of years. Windows XP is reaching end of support, April 8th, 2014. That's not very far away. Now, what does that mean to you? You're not going to be able to receive security patches, hotfixes, or incident support on Windows XP. Running on an older operating system platform is, on a technical level, less secure. It's more difficult to manage, and it is more expensive to maintain. Running on an older operating system platform also exposes your customers to business and regulatory risks that they need to manage. Now, you may incur costs as well as the technical issues relating to custom support. So I want to take this opportunity first to thank you for being an XP customer, but now I'm afraid it's time to move up. So why haven't you already migrated, many of you, from Windows XP to a newer version of Windows? Now, the basic reasons, of course, are tied to the cost of migration and maybe some of the uncertainties of moving to a new version of Windows. You have questions such as, will my applications work? Do my computers support Windows 8? How do I actually perform the deployment? And with all these questions, you may have gotten stuck before the deployment project even got started. So, we have 3 reasons that we're going to cover in the remainder of my portion of the session today on why retiring Windows XP is a good idea and why we would want to move to a modern operating system, Windows 7 or Windows 8. And so I'm going to dive into each one of these pillars in this deck. We're going to talk about giving value with Windows 8 and Windows 7. We're going to talk about how you eliminate risks and really kind of go beyond the end of support for Windows XP, and then finally we'll talk about deployment, the fact that it really is easier than you think it is. So first, let's talk about getting value today. And the idea, of course, is that if we're considering compatibility with Windows 7 or Windows 8, we have some flexibility there. The good news is that applications that work in Windows 7 are going to work in Windows 8. Shouldn't be an issue there. So I'm going to talk briefly about Windows 7, a little bit more about Windows 8, some of the benefits that have come with those 2 platforms. Now, why am I talking about Windows 7 when Windows 8 is available? Well, the reality is many of you are probably still in the midst of a rollout of Windows 7 from XP. So it's still valid, and it's still a better option, certainly, than Windows XP, which is, of course, ending support. So Windows 7 delivers key capabilities that you and your enterprise can have asked for. You've asked us to enable productivity and give you anytime, anywhere access to information you need to get your work done. It provides you tools to help your IT support their businesses securely, to protect corporate data, to achieve cost efficiencies, and really take advantage of trends in the client computing virtualization arena. So these three main pillars here have to do with the improvements that we've made and the big picture items around delivering customer value. First of all, making users productive anywhere. The idea is that you want to, and your users want to work from home. They want to work from when they're on the road, when they're in a branch office, and they want to be as productive as if they were at the desk in the headquarters. We want to be able to support enhanced security and control, so we extend the security foundation with encryption for portable USB devices and drives, IT control over which applications can run, and so on. It really is built on a secure foundation that was first established with Windows Vista and then carried it forward and improved in Windows 7. And then finally, streamlining PC management. It's easier for us to manage and deploy desktops now, and deploy laptops and virtual environments, and we can leverage the same skills and tools that you're already using now. Now let's move to the present. Let's talk about Windows 8. So in Windows 8, we're taking our commitment to deliver experiences and devices that users love and demand, along with the enterprise-grade solutions, to a whole new level. So here's a summary of the specific investments we've made in Windows 8. Now, first of all, it's all about devices and experiences users love. It's not just consumers, it's everyone. It's business users, and everyone. Everybody wants to have a great choice in the device that they use to get their work done. So in the past, business users have had to choose between convenience or productivity. Now with Windows 8 tablets, users can have a no-compromise experience. Windows 8 delivers a touch-first experience, but we also have full support for mouse and keyboard for true productivity, support for the same desktop that you're used to using. And the no-compromise experience, where users can have the convenience of and the mobility of a tablet, the power and familiar experience of the full PC, and the ease to effortlessly move between the work and personal activities. Also with Windows 8, tablet users can have a connected experience with apps from the Windows Store. They can also use the same desktop line of business and productivity apps they use today, and they're using on previous versions of Windows. So we have the best of all worlds. And if it's about productivity, Windows 8 delivers other technologies that help people stay productive no matter where they are. So in particular, it's going to help people stay productive as they're increasingly mobile. Again, that's a big goal, is to make people more productive even while they're mobile with their devices. So what about end-to-end security? From client devices to network to back-end infrastructure, Windows 8 has features that improve the security and reliability of the systems in your business. From power on to power off, Windows 8 provides a more secure foundation to help you keep your business running. And there are management and virtualization advancements as well, and these features help IT administrators manage their client PCs. So to summarize, no compromise. On an x86 version of Windows 8.1, we have a touch-first experience. We have the full support for your desktop. You can make the desktop your default location when your users boot up, but you still have full mouse and full keyboard capabilities. Again, no compromise experience, where we have the convenience and mobility of a tablet, the power and familiar experience of a full PC, and the ease to effortlessly move back and forth. Also with Windows 8 tablets, we have a connected experience with apps from the Windows Store. So they can use their desktop line of business apps and productivity apps and the new style applications in Windows 8. And finally, since it's Windows, companies can take advantage of their existing management and security infrastructure, the same tools and domain environments and policies, and use those to also manage Windows 8 and Windows 8.1 based tablets. Okay, so our second item to talk about is eliminating risk. And the idea, of course, here is the fact that because XP is ending support, there are some things that you need to consider, and some reasons that are, I'll be honest with you, a little bit scary, considering actually staying on XP should it no longer be supported. Analysts have been saying a lot these days, certainly. IDC, for example, in this quote here, says organizations that continue to retain a Windows XP environment not only are leaving themselves exposed to security risks and support challenges, but are also wasting budget dollars that would be better used in modernizing their IT investments. So what IDC has measured is that the costs for supporting older operating systems continue to increase over time, both from the end user productivity perspective as well as from an IT labor cost perspective. IDC is also advising that organizations should spend their budget in moving to a modern OS instead of trying to support older ones. It's just simply a matter of dollars and cents to move to the newer platform, and that's not even considering some of the security issues that we need to address as well. And let's talk about some of those. Now, this is a very involved slide, and I hope the resolution on your screen is able to see some of the fine details here. So I won't talk to every bit of detail, but you can kind of see over time here the key threats that have evolved, starting with Windows 95 in 1995. We had the internet was just growing, mail and email was just on the verge of really breaking out and becoming mainstream. So connectivity wasn't a big deal, and therefore some of the threats really weren't available and targeting systems. But of course, with Windows XP, Windows 98 and then Windows XP, more and more people using the internet and gaining connectivity, and certainly having the threats that we may remember from 1999, Melissa, we had Love Letter in 2000, a lot of leveraging of social engineering. But Windows XP did improve and did address some of those issues in 2001. We secured the logon with Control-Alt-Delete. We added access control, user profiles, and so on. So we did address those threats. New threats back in 2001, Code Red and NIMDA, Blaster in 2003, Slammer in 2003, 9/11 certainly happened in 2001. We had exploiting buffer overflows, script kiddies were taking advantage of tools and things that were out there. And so what did we have to do? That was a big area of security and a big improvement that we made with Service Pack 2 for Windows XP. So we randomized the address space to make it harder to attack the operating system. We included tools such as data execution prevention to watch the execution of code and have processors actually detect when someone's trying to execute what should be storage as code. Adapting a security development lifecycle at Microsoft. Every line of code reviewed not only by developers and a team of developers, but also by a security buddy that watches for every security aspect related to the code that's being developed. That's just one example. Making sure that auto-update happens by default and is very well tested and secured so that when a vulnerability is known that we can get it out the door, get the fix for that out the door very quickly before the bad guys have a chance to exploit it, and so on. Back in 2005, Zotab, we had attacks on Office. It was actually moving up the stack, meaning we're attacking applications now because the operating system is more secure. Now we're going to attack the applications and some of those vulnerabilities. There were rootkit exploits that came out. More and more script keys, buffer overflows, and so on. And so how did we address that? Well, we had Windows Vista. We introduced BitLocker for encrypting the hard drive. We improved the address space layout randomization and data execution prevention. We had the full security development lifecycle and so on. So many, many more improvements with Windows Vista and securing the environment. Well, the threats are now organized crime in 2009, botnets, identity theft, and so on. We had Conficker in 2008. And so in Windows 7, improvements across the board. Additional tools such as AppLocker to be able to lock down and restrict applications that can run and enforce that through policy. We had improved user account control so it wasn't so invasive as it was in Windows Vista, so better user experience all around, improvements in the IPsec stack, so for the sake of security across the network and supporting that at the desktop through policy. BitLocker to go, so now not only do we have the ability to encrypt our hard drives, but we can also encrypt our USB sticks and actually enforce through policy that my business users, if they're going to use a USB stick, it has to have, and if I'm going to write anything to it, the policy says, no, it has to be BitLocker encrypted first before you can actually use it to transport data. And so all company information should be secured. So great improvements in Windows 7. And then finally, in Windows 8, in 2012, we introduced Secure Boot, firmware-based TPM, so looking at and being able to watch a system at the firmware level for any exploits. Trusted Boot, Measured Boot, and remote attestation support. Great improvements in many different areas in Windows 8 that came. As a result, of course, of, as the threats improve, as the vulnerabilities are discovered, we add new, not only fixes, but new technologies and technologies that are manageable in an enterprise to be able to better protect the end user. And of course, with the end user better protected, you're also better protecting your business from external attacks. I'm trying to change the page here, excuse me. I have pages that are stuck together. There we go. So, how about connectivity? I mean, where were we back in 1995? Again, we had an ad hoc internet connection, so it wasn't so much of a threat. In Windows XP, around that time frame in 2001, people were using a logon and had more opportunities to be always on and connected. And by the time Windows XP Service Pack 2 came out in 2004, everyone assumed that we were going to be on the internet all the time. And so we really had to address security because of the availability and the access that the bad guys had to our systems and the many different methods of access to our devices. With Windows Vista, we had to secure not only the system itself, but also the intellectual property and the information and the applications. And so we had to have a foundational support in Windows Vista to support that. Anywhere access, now not only are we on the internet when we're at the office, but we're on the internet anywhere. And so again, better control over the applications, better control over the secured environment that our applications run on, and being able to support that in a business environment through policy. I really like this graph at the top here showing how over time there's been more and more cellular subscriptions, more and more users of the internet, kind of looking at some of the big points in time where Facebook was introduced, YouTube and Twitter and iPads came out and so on. And then the fact that the number of fixed internet subscribers even in their homes is also increasing over time. Finally, of course, in 2012 we introduced Windows 8, and now beyond that Windows 8.1, where we have, again, because we're more and more mobile, because we have multiple devices, that's a very key point here as well, and because we have access to and can benefit from cloud access for the sake of supporting, for example, a common configuration among the devices that we support. Being able to support in business multiple devices with cloud-based management tools, tools such as Microsoft's Windows Intune, as a cloud-based solution for management of those devices that aren't necessarily joined to the domain. They're not owned by the company, but I have the ability to apply policy, to test and watch security, and even publish applications to those end users. So being able to support cloud and multiple devices and end users for the sake of their productivity. Okay, finally, deployment. So once you're convinced that yes, Windows XP is not where we want to be and we need to move to a more modern OS, now we need to talk about some of the tools and deployment technologies that you'll have available at your disposal, and it really is easier and less expensive than you think. So if you're still on XP, start working on that migration right now. And we mentioned that earlier, certainly. In April 2014, you do face the risk of running unsupported software. Now, most new hardware options, well, they're probably not supported on Windows XP. So you're probably already running into that issue now with new hardware, with new applications. Many application vendors, well, like Microsoft actually, and you know, for example, supporting Office 2013. Office 2013 isn't supported on Windows XP. So we've already abandoned, or will be abandoning soon, the Windows XP platform as a supported operating system for applications, whether Microsoft's or third parties. Organizations that are deploying Windows 8 and they want to be able to get the benefits of this operating system, well, as we discussed previously, if you have already started a migration to Windows 7, perhaps you want to look at adopting Windows 7 and Windows 8 side by side. Now, this is especially true for those of you who would like to take advantage of the new tablet and slate devices, the new form factors that are available. You really should look into deploying Windows 8.1. These devices, there's a great variety, great number of different types of devices for all of your different types of users. And you should also consider building applications that can leverage the Windows 8 experience. So these are great areas in which to begin your investigation. Now, to get ready for Windows 8.1, there's going to be some infrastructure preparations that you should also consider. For example, you want to make sure that your management tools and your security software fully support Windows 8.1. But given the growing trends around bring your own device, you also should plan to support employee-owned Windows 8 and Windows RT devices for your corporate network. Now, here's a hint for you. The good news is that the latest version of our server operating system and system management tools, so Server 2012 R2 and System Center 2012 R2, as well as Windows Intune, the latest version, also support mobile device management for Microsoft and non-Microsoft operating systems as well. So along with your management of Windows devices, you can also manage your Android phones, your tablets, your users' tablets, the iOS phones and tablets, your Mac OS hardware, as well as Windows. So this is all technology that's available today from Microsoft for managing new devices, not just Microsoft, but also other products. Now, when you do decide to deploy a new Windows operating system, you have to do some preparation to make this happen. First thing you'll need to do is make sure that all of your applications have been identified and are ready to go. Now, in some cases, this is going to mean testing. In other cases, it might mean packaging them and making them available for installation, either during the deployment process or later from an enterprise app store. Now, in parallel to that, you're going to also want to make sure that your infrastructure is ready for the operating system. So, for example, you may need to make sure that your systems management tools have been upgraded to the needed version for this new operating system. You probably need to perform some steps to make sure that the new Windows version can be properly activated. And there's always the opportunity to make infrastructure upgrades to support new functionality, tools such as direct access and other benefits and improvements in the newer operating systems. Now, while these preparation tasks are going on, you also want to create a master image of your new operating system. Now, over the years, this process has matured. There's great current recommended best practice to be a completely automated process that in the end should really require no user interaction. And when it's time to create a new image, make slight adjustments to the process and kick off the process to create a new image. Come back in an hour or two and the process is complete. Now then there's the deployment process itself. Now we're going to take that image and we're going to install it on new and existing computers. And this too should be completely automated and well tested so that you have confidence that it's going to take care of all the finer points, migrating the user settings and data, reinstalling the applications, or installing the operating system or the image, installing any additional applications, and so on. And the idea here is the user needs to be immediately productive and, of course, happy once the deployment completes. Now, it's also important to note that none of this should be considered a throwaway or one-time work. In fact, there's a lot of benefit to continue maintaining this process and using it even after the new operating system deployment has completed or that project has completed. Think about break-fix scenarios. You know, when you have a good, trusted process, you can adopt new support policies such as, let's rebuild the computer if we can't solve the problem within an hour. Okay, so that's a policy we might say. And thereby we can actually reduce our overall support costs. There's also always new computers being purchased, new application versions being acquired, etc. So this process really is an infrastructure investment, and it's going to serve you well for years to come. So if you're considering the application piece of it, how do I update my applications? How do I know that I have the newest version of the applications? So you're going to consider, is there a new version of the application that I need to upgrade to? Perhaps your vendor has a web-based version that I can use either permanently or even temporarily while I'm doing the migration to a new version. Does the application vendor support a Windows 8 experience application? So an application that's fully touch-enabled and works right from the native Windows 8 environment. Does the application allow me to virtualize it? So perhaps I don't have the option to install it. Perhaps it doesn't even run in Windows 8. It only runs in Windows XP. But in that case, I may run it on another platform and either present a virtualized application through a virtualization connection to a session on another server or somewhere else, or even application virtualization on the local desktop, or even a virtual machine running on the local desktop. A lot of different options around virtualization in order to make an application work in an environment that it thinks is older than it actually is. And then, of course, ultimately, we would want to remediate the application if we have the means to do that, if we have a good relationship with the application vendor, help them address the issues, because certainly they're also interested in getting their applications to work in the newest operating systems, a modern environment. So there's a lot of great tools that you can use for your deployment projects. All of these mentioned here are Microsoft tools. These are all no-cost tools. There'll be more tools talked about in this session today, but just wanted to make you aware of the free deployment tools that are available, such as the Microsoft Deployment Toolkit, Windows Deployment Server, which is a service that you install, role you install on Windows Server for network-based or network boot for the sake of a boot image across the network and applying images. We have, for the sake of application, an application compatibility toolkit that you can use to troubleshoot your applications and test their compatibility. And we have tools for assessment and planning around upgrades. And so you probably want to start with that tool first and actually do an assessment of your environment to see what sorts of resources you'd be able to support. Now, I love this quote from Gartner here. The average IT pro is taking 6 hours to deploy a single workstation. Why? they're still using the tools they use to deploy Windows XP. Use modern tools from Microsoft. Most are free. And a machine can be moved from Windows XP to Windows 7 in 30 minutes or less. And that's entirely true. We have really useful tools, and of course other vendors also have very useful tools. So now is the perfect time for you to update your environment with modern hardware, a modern operating system, running modern apps, and a modern browser. And you should start with a side-by-side deployment, as we talked about. If you're already in the process of rolling out Windows 7, certainly do consider also deploying Windows 8 in some environments and to some devices. And these are investments that if you make in the day, they are going to carry forward. And additionally, Windows 8 PCs, as I mentioned earlier, do work well with Windows 7, and even with an older infrastructure environment, domain environments and policies. Those also do apply to Windows 8 as well. Here's some additional resources for you. These are key resources that will help you with your deployment. So, for example, we have a great informational page that will link you to additional information and tools. So, Microsoft.com/end-of-support for how to move from Windows XP and maybe expansion on some of the ideas and reasons I've talked about today. If you are a business decision maker or a technical decision maker, we have the enterprise site at windows.com. This is great for enterprise information, flexible work style scenarios, and so on. If you're an IT professional, Microsoft.com/springboard is a great place to go. And certainly as a developer, if you're building Windows 8 applications or interested in building to the new modern operating system and the new modern operating environment, dev.windows.com. And with that, I am done, so I'm going to stick around and answer any questions that may come up, but I'm going to hand it back to our facilitator.
Well, thank you so much, Kevin. That was great information. Our two next speakers also have great information to share around Windows migration and virtualization. Carl Mazzanti is a two-time Microsoft Partner of the Year. He's also the founder and CEO of eMazzanti Technologies, which is a large managed service provider on the Eastern Seaboard. He's also a StorageCraft partner, which is why we invited him to join us today as we discuss migration and virtualization. He recently did a case study with us talking about some of the best practices for disaster recovery, specifically how he was able to help his partners there in the East Coast survive Hurricane Sandy last year, which was a big, huge deal for everyone. We also have Steven Schneider. Steven is my colleague here at StorageCraft. He's a technical marketing manager for StorageCraft who has 20 plus years of experience in IT, and he also enjoys working with a lot of tech gadgets, so he can tell you a lot about that as we continue our discussion. Thank you so much, Carl and Steven.
Thanks, Laura. Kevin, again, thanks for your time. We always appreciate hearing from Microsoft. One thing to mention is at the end of this, we do have some time slated for question and answer. If you have any questions, or if you haven't already noticed that, please feel free to drop in some questions into our Q&As for the end of the webinar. As Kevin mentioned, there are a number of changes in technology at Microsoft. Obviously, there's new features and functionality. Server 2012 R2 is out. Hyper-V is definitely a contender these days, and a very hardened technology to consider implementing in either your business or your customer's business. In addition, there's the benefits of Windows 8.1. Also, there is cloud, whether you're thinking of a public cloud, private cloud, hybrid cloud. Cloud is definitely something that people are considering because of the advantages offered there. In addition, there's infrastructure as a service. If you're not managing your own equipment and you want to host it, that's something else to consider. And of course, as we mentioned, there's virtualization. Now, the question on this is, as a Microsoft Gold partner, how do we get to the next step? How do we get on to moving from point A to point B? Well, in some cases, we've got legacy systems in place. And the reasons, as Kevin mentioned, are many and varied why we want to keep a legacy system in place. A lot of times, the legacy system just works, so why change it? We've already invested the time and money into this. Let's continue squeezing profit out of this system until we're ready to move on or until we need to move on. In the case of something like Microsoft Windows XP, this is definitely becoming a point where it's a need to move on in our time frame. Additionally, Maybe the legacy system maintenance and support is no longer available. The people that originally built the system are not around. This is going to be a large cost and investment in moving to a new platform, recoding if necessary. There's a lot of issues there. And of course, always the cost in upgrading. The question is, how do we get to this new system from a legacy system, or how do we maintain an existing system in current technology? Well, obviously virtualization can help. Being able to virtualize allows you to neutralize hardware dependence. So if you have an old system that is based, a legacy system that's using a specific type of hardware, if you can virtualize that, you can isolate that into a new virtual machine and get off of that dependence on legacy hardware. You can also take advantage of adaptability in virtualization so that you can put your systems in virtual machines and move them from one host to another for disaster recovery purposes, business continuity. But really the key here I want to talk about is solid backup solutions. In this case, we're looking at a solution that allows you to not only work with existing systems, but also to work with new systems. Now, Carl's got some specific real-world experience with high-profile customers. And Carl, I wanted to take a moment to ask you a question. When you're dealing with legacy systems, can you tell us about some of the challenges that you've experienced in migrating or virtualizing those systems, and how you've been able to help your customers to successfully overcome those challenges?
Sure. One of the things I have to say is I never actually thought this was going to happen this year, but we even hit a Windows 2000 server this last week, and it was being backed up by StorageCraft, and we virtualized it for the customer. It was running a line of business application, and we were able to get the customer's business up and running and honestly start talking to them about what they're doing with their legacy assets. So for a lot of the participants who are on this call, we understand that you have services that you're running. There's going to be some sort of time frame for migration plans, and not everything can happen overnight or needs to be planned out or third-party purchases worked out. And for us as a service provider, StorageCraft really saved the day in that 2000 example, for sure. On the migration front, one of the nicest things about StorageCraft is that when you start your migration, one of the age-old biggest hesitations of moving from one platform to another is fear. What happens if the migration goes poorly? What happens if I apply that patch at 11 o'clock on a Friday and it doesn't go well, and that means I won't make the date with the person of my dreams? With StorageCraft covering your back, some of those concerns disappear. We back up not only our customer servers every 15 minutes, but we also do that for key executives, laptops, and desktops. We've been using the desktop agent now for 5, almost 6 years. We've had instances where the only people who get laptops are like someone who's really, really important. So we back up people's laptops. An exec leaves, a key salesperson goes out on the road, and they drop the laptop, the drive breaks, we've had family members spill orange juice on the device. With StorageCraft, since we backed up the computer, you can spin it up and virtualize it like you would with a server. We let the user RDP into their machine or use LogMeIn or some other resource to get to the device, and we have them go to whatever the local store is nearby, or use a Microsoft Surface or whatever, a Mac, Linux device. It really doesn't make a difference as long as it has remote desktop. And as far as the user is concerned, it's not an emergency anymore. You actually have time to make a decision. So we've been a huge fan of StorageCraft. They've saved the day more often than I can count.
Thanks, Carl. And I really appreciate you mentioning Virtual Boot. That's one of our technologies that we use for instantly virtualizing a backup image. So as you mentioned, if you're in a situation where you're migrating a laptop to new hardware, or you wanted to, you had that orange juice spilled on the CEO's laptop, and you need to get that backup image up and running. For those of you that aren't aware of it, Virtual Boot allows you to right-click on a backup image and simply choose Virtual Boot, and in just a few minutes or less, you'll have an instance of that recovery point running in a virtual machine. So it really does make life easy. Some of the other things that, this isn't mentioned on my slide here, but while you were talking, Carl, I thought about it. The hardware independent restore is also another benefit too, because as new equipment comes out, UEFI standards, large block disks, a lot of this new hardware that's coming out, you want to be able to move the old system over to the new system. And when you're looking at an upgrade or migration path, it's not exactly a disaster, but it certainly has some of the same characteristics. In this case, you want to keep everything that you've got. You want to be able to go in there and migrate the information, the settings, the user's configuration files, any installed applications, and of course you want minimal downtime. So this is something where you want to be able to move from one hardware platform to another and maintain that Microsoft environment. Hardware Independent Restore allows you to do that. It basically goes in there and it allows you to take an AMD chipset installation of Microsoft Windows XP and to migrate that or restore it to a bare metal device with an Intel chipset. And then you go through Microsoft's tools and use your upgrade path for getting up to Windows 8 or Windows 8.1, as is the case today. In addition, our Head Start Restore technology is basically a queued technology which allows you to lay down incremental images of servers as they come in. Carl, you were mentioning about using laptops in Virtual Boot. What are some of the other examples of situations that you've come across where you've needed to take an old server or an old laptop and move that to a new Windows Server 2012 example? Or maybe a good question would be to ask you, what about when you're virtualizing like that old Server 2000 that you were talking about? What are some ways that you found StorageCraft helps in that regard?
So a pretty common request from customers with, so let's say largely this audience has 2003 and XP machines. We get customers who will call us up and say, we can't get hardware support for our equipment any longer. And they've got some sort of line of business application that was designed at that time, and maybe the vendor's gone out of business, or the code programmers are no longer around, or the cost of the upgrade would far exceed the value that they would gain from the move. So what we've used StorageCraft for is we've purchased new servers with warranties on them, and we have done bare metal restores to new hardware. So they get faster processors, more memory, and very importantly, the hardware is under warranty so they can get parts and replacements. It's allowed some of our customers with analytics for manufacturing machines or business intelligence or just about any line of business application you can think of, benefit from having warranties and better hardware than what was available when they purchased the system, without having to do large license purchases or changes. It also gives people a peace of mind. When you go to bed at night, your customer base, which is all the users of systems that we support. So if you think of the community, people on this phone, we're all supporting some users out there. Those people, when they show up at their desk, they expect their systems to work. Well, if their systems are going to work, you need to know that not only are you backing them up, but you can recover quickly from them. And that business continuity concept of being able to virtualize, in under an hour while you try and figure out what was happening and being able to do so from anywhere in the world is probably one of the only reasons why me and my staff sleep at night.
I can totally understand that, Carl, and we definitely don't want you to lose any sleep. Carl, I appreciate your time, and I'm going to take you off the hot seat for a minute now because I think you've really laid a foundation for me as far as how one vendor solution can help you do everything. I think definitely it can help you sleep at night. It can take care of your old systems. It can help you migrate to new systems. It's a disaster recovery solution so that you can have replications of your backups on-site and off-site. But let's talk a little bit about how this overall recoverability solution can fit into your environment in the audience. Basically, the StorageCraft recoverability solution is 4 parts. There's the backup, the replication, the recovery, and the management. Of course, all of these, I would consider the most important is the recovery. But you need to have solid backups to lay the foundation for a good recovery. You need to be able to replicate those. The rule of 3-2-1, you want to have replicas of your backup images. You need to be able to manage this process. As much as you can, you want to automate it and provide alerts as well as going through this. So let's talk about how StorageCraft's recoverability solution provides you with a reliable disaster recovery solution. It's an award-winning backup and recovery software is our ShadowProtect backup software. In addition, we have our Image Manager software, our CMD, which is our command and monitoring tool. And all of these are designed to help small and medium-sized businesses to recover anytime, anywhere from any disaster, or in some cases, planned migration. The nice thing is that as a software company, we're hardware agnostic. We allow you to recover to whatever you have available. If you want to move to new equipment, if you want to move to a virtual environment, you can do that. This is all part of our overall recoverability solution. As I mentioned, StorageCraft ShadowProtect is our backup and recovery software that has our backup agent. It's image-based, which means that you're going to collect everything. You're going to collect your Microsoft operating system, the installed applications, everything at the byte and sector level of that hard drive, you're going to collect it. System data, your running services, all the settings. In addition, we have our StorageCraft Image Manager, which is going to be your replication tool. And this Image Manager is going to allow you to handle your offsite replication. It'll handle your image retention policies, consolidation, and of course it automatically goes in and checks and rechecks, verifies your backup images for integrity. This is important because a lot of times you want to make sure that you have a backup image you can go back to, but something might have happened. If you've got this on a dedupe volume, or if you've got some kind of an issue with RAID and parity that causes data corruption, Image Manager's got your back because it's going in there and checking and rechecking your backup images for the integrity. StorageCraft Cloud Services, we recently launched, well, not too recently, it was the beginning of this year, our StorageCraft Cloud, and this is more than just an offsite repository of your backup images. It also allows you to spin up a virtual machine of your backup image in our StorageCraft Cloud and actually put that on a VPN or to RDP into that machine, assign an IP address to it, and it's really an incredible service. So definitely, if you have a moment, check that out as well. And of course, as I mentioned, there's our StorageCraft Shadow Control CMD, which is the overall remote monitoring tool that gives you that single pane of glass for managing everything. Now, I know we want to get to some questions, so I'm going to try and skim through this a little bit. But as far as recovery goes, we're all about the recovery. We do allow you fast image-based backups, but we have built our system around building a very solid recovery tool, either to new physical hardware if you're doing a bare metal recovery, to a number of hypervisors. We support the Microsoft Hyper-V as well as VMware, also Citrix, Red Hat, and Oracle's hypervisors as well. We definitely want to make sure that you have the ability to recover how, when, and where you want. If you have any questions for us about our overall recoverability solution, please feel free to send an email to us at sales@storagecraft.com, or Carl's contact information is here as well. And at this point, I'd like to turn the time back over for a Q&A period. So let's see what we've got in terms of questions.
First of all, I did want to thank again Carl, and I know he would appreciate it if we mentioned, for those of you who are on the East Coast who would really like to have a managed service provider help you out with your IT infrastructure and make sure you're up and running when you need to be. He would love to hear from you, and his contact information is right there. Would you like to add anything, Carl, to that?
No, I make myself available anytime. We've got a lot of experience, and I know in the recovery world, you really don't want to be alone.
Okay.
It's important to have someone cover your back, and for us, that's StorageCraft, and I think that experience we'd be happy to share with others.
Okay, we do have a couple of questions, and I'd like to invite both Carl and Kevin to chime in on this. If we aren't able to answer your questions in the amount of time that we do have left, we'd have just a little over 5 minutes. If we aren't able to answer your questions, we will definitely email you with some responses. But just a couple of things, and I would really like to hear from all of our panelists on this. How much time will it take to complete a migration project? I know it. This is me, Laura, asking, adding on to that question. It does depend on the size of your company, doesn't it? And maybe Kevin can weigh in first, and then Carl, and then Steve.
Yeah, certainly. Well, yes, definitely it's true that it will matter how much of how large of an organization you have, how complex it is. Certainly the process is going to involve, as I mentioned earlier, getting a good inventory of your applications, understanding what's out there, understanding all the hardware that's out there, getting using a tool like the Microsoft Assessment and Planning tool to see, okay, of the hardware that I have out there, do a quick report on, or actually do a scan of all the hardware and tell me back, okay, which of these devices that I have out there, which of these pieces of hardware will actually support the new operating system, which one of these will have issues perhaps supporting new versions of applications, and so on. These are tools that are all free, the Microsoft Assessment and Planning tool. Once we have all that in place, we understand what we need to get. Then, of course, the licensing piece of it. What do I need to purchase? How much? How do I want to have licensing from Microsoft? And you want to talk to a good partner, either your local Microsoft representative or a partner that is well versed in deployment and migration. And then working with them also to use the tools such as StorageCraft and some of the tools from Microsoft to actually perform those processes of building a sample image, building a deployable image, and then testing that deployment, maybe with a small set of users first, and then with certainly scaling it out a little bit more. Ultimately, the goal is to when the user either clicks on a link or allows the upgrade to happen, when they come back to their machine, it's their same environment, it's their same documents. They just happen to have a new operating system with new capabilities, a new environment for new style of applications in Windows 8, and everything else is just there and works, and they're happy. And that's, of course, the ultimate goal. But yeah, it does depend upon the complexity of your organization and the different types of hardware, the different types of applications you have to support.
Carl, what about you? What are some of the experiences you've had with migration projects?
We're a professional services firm, and I feel like the migrations that you see go best are the ones that understand that the day-to-day support is easy to reproduce and predictable and understand. I would say that one of the things that people on this call should do is look for some partner. Look for someone who has done this before and has some experience. That starting that relationship could help them for decades or centuries to come. I'll take an example. I've got accounting staff in my office, but we would still do an audit. The people inside of my office are more than capable of doing their day-to-day jobs, but no one would actually make a mistake without planning for it. They just don't know. So having some other partner in the wings is a good idea. And then the other one is have some sort of a recovery path. Whatever changes you do inside of your organization, have some way that you can roll back if things don't go well. Those days of escalating levels of commitment should stop. Like we started to do something, it's not going well, we're dumping funds, trying to figure out what's going on. If you have some way of rolling back, you can then take your time to make decisions instead of things becoming an emergency. And I think that's one of the reasons why we have StorageCraft on this call today. Really, it's that is one way to roll back is by far, having a good set of backups.
Thank you, Carl. I'm going to keep my comments short because I think you and Kevin have both filled in all the best points. One thing I've noticed is with regards to the amount of time it takes to have a good migration, the first thing is the best migrations are invisible. They're unnoticed. You don't even notice that a migration has occurred. Basically, you come in one day and your IT professionals or Carl's Emazanti or somebody tells you, hey, by the way, you've been upgraded, and you just reap the benefits. As far as that goes, though, I think the biggest part of a migration, a successful migration that is the planning. And as you mentioned, Carl, experience, and Kevin, the tools that are available to you, implementing the right tools in the right way, those are definitely the ways that you can incorporate in a good, successful migration process. And, of course, that all comes down to planning in advance. So those are my comments.
Okay, we have time for just one more question, and it's about, this next question is about virtualization, and it's specifically for StorageCraft, but I think that there are some questions around it that will help others provide some additional insights. So I'll start with Steve. So does StorageCraft allow me to convert a backup to a virtual image? Will it help me go to a virtualization platform, not just migrate to a new OS?
Yes, absolutely. What we try to do is give you the tools to recover or to migrate when and how you want to. We're not going to fit you into a box and say this is how the best way for you to migrate to a virtual environment is, and you have to follow these steps. We are giving you tools where you can, for example, take a backup image and convert it to a native VHD or VMDK file format. We're also giving you our Head Start Restore, which allows you to pre-stage a recovery in a virtual environment. You could lay down your backup images as they come in on your production server onto this virtual machine hosted on Hyper-V, and when you're ready to on the weekend, instead of spending the whole weekend working on this migration, you simply take that last incremental off the production system, shut down the production system, apply that incremental to your already pre-staged, almost ready to go Head Start Restore virtual machine client, and in a matter of minutes you've got that up and running in a new virtual environment. And as I said, we cover a number of different virtual environments. And then of course you can always do a restore from an image to a virtual environment, or spin up a virtual boot of a backup image. There's a number of ways that we allow you to virtualize, and to use this as a way of managing your migration to a hypervisor platform of choice, or also to use it for testing purposes. But basically, we give you the tools you need and empower you to be able to use them the best way you see fit.
Okay, we have just a few seconds. So Kevin, would you like to leave us with some final thoughts?
I can't overemphasize enough how important it is to move off of Windows XP for the sake of supportability. There were a number of facts and resources. In fact, I encourage everyone to do a search and check for, as I like to say, Google it on Bing. Do a search for the IDC report on moving from Windows XP and some of the reasons for that. There's a really, really good report. It's actually a year and a half, I believe. It's a year and a half old, but it was some really good information in a study they did to show you what the cost benefits were of moving to a modern operating system and some of the drawbacks of staying on an older and perhaps unsupported operating system. I'll throw out one more kind of a scary fact, but consider this scenario. Microsoft on the second Tuesday of the month comes out with an update, and that update is available for Windows Vista, Windows 7, Windows 8, Windows 8.1, and it's a vulnerability that exists in Windows XP as well. But that vulnerability will not be patched in Windows XP. So now not only are you left unpatched, but the bad guys know about the vulnerability and may target your system because of that. So again, it's kind of a scary scenario, but you need to be aware of the realities of staying on a non-supported operating system. Hate to leave you with a scary thought like that, but it does mean that you do have a lot of really good reasons and certainly a lot of positive reasons to move to a modern operating system and Windows 8.1.
Well, it's not scary if you have a plan in place. So
Correct.
that's right. So thank you so much for joining us today on behalf of Kevin and Carl and Steve. Thank you for your time. I do want to close with this thought as well. If there is something in this webinar that you didn't have a chance to hear or would like to view the webinar again, it will be available in the next few days on the StorageCraft Recovery Zone, and that's itrecoveryzone.com. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.